Daniel Ross sat quietly in the back of the transport ship, hands tied behind his back. Two tall Zethri guards stood near him. Their smooth blue armor and sharp glowing eyes made him nervous. The Zethri Empire had captured him during a battle. On the edge of human space, he thought they would lock him in a prison cell or worse. But something strange happened. Instead of prison, he was taken to a massive royal ship, the Crown Flame. It was a shining vessel that looked more like a floating palace than a warship. Its walls were lined with gold patterns, and the ceilings were so high they disappeared in shadows. "Why am I here?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but unsure. One of the guards answered without looking at him. "The princess ordered you to fix something," she said. "Humans are good with machines." Daniel blinked. "The princess?" "Yes, you will be under watch. If you try anything, you die." Daniel gave a small nod. "Got it." Inside the ship's core control room, Daniel was pushed forward. The lights were soft blue, and strange alien symbols glowed across floating screens. In the center of the room stood Princess Valera. She was tall, with shimmering silver skin and long white hair that reached her waist. A thin crown sat on her head. She wore a flowing dark robe with gold trim. Her eyes were sharp cold like ice. "So," she said without emotion, "this is the human engineer they captured." Daniel stayed quiet for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Yes, Your Highness." Valera's lips curled slightly. "At least, you have manners. You will fix my personal AI assistant. It malfunctioned during our last jump. If you fail, I will throw you into space." Daniel gave a small smile. "I'll do my best." Valera narrowed her eyes. "Why are you smiling?" "'Cause," he said softly, "I'm glad to be useful." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned away. "Begin." Daniel worked. Carefully. Zathari systems were very different from human ones, but he was quick to learn. As he adjusted the AI core, small sparks flew. He wiped his forehead and focused. Hours passed, but he didn't complain. Valera watched him silently. From a distance. Once she asked, "Do you know what this ship means?" Daniel shook his head. "No." "This ship was made by 10 generations of Zethri builders. It's not just a machine. It's a symbol of our glory. Human touching it is strange." Daniel looked up. "I understand. I'll be careful." By the end of the day, he stood and pressed a button. The AI assistant flickered to life. A soft female voice filled the room. "Welcome back, Princess Valera." The princess blinked. "It works." Daniel smiled again. Suddenly, her face changed. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Why are you being nice to me, human? You want something?" Daniel stood still. The room became quiet, looked at her gently and replied, "No, you're just someone who needed help." Valera looked. "Shocked? That's it?" "Yes," Daniel said. "That's all." She scoffed and turned away, foolish. But her voice was not strong anymore. It was quiet, thoughtful. The next day, Daniel was asked to fix other systems. The crew did. Not like him. Some whispered rude things in their language. Others walked past him without a word. But Daniel kept working. He fixed engines, cleaned filters, and even stopped a reactor leak. He never asked for reward. He never shouted. It just helped. Princess Valera watched from above. One day, she walked into the room where he was working. "You don't act like other humans," she said. Daniel looked up from a panel. "Maybe I'm just boring." She frowned. "Or maybe you're hiding something." Daniel chuckled. "You can search me if you want." Valera looked at him, confused. "You joke, even as a prisoner." "Not trying to escape," he said. "I'm just trying to help." Later that evening, Daniel was walking through the hall when he heard a soft sound. Crying. He followed the sound and found Valera sitting alone in a dark corner, her hands holding a small hologram. It was her mother, the Empress, speaking in a cold voice. "You must learn to rule. Emotions are for the weak. Stop wasting time with foolish thoughts." Valera didn't see Daniel at first. He stood silently, then stepped forward and sat near Bajess. Close enough to be there, but not too close. "I'm not here to bother you," he said quietly. She looked up, surprised. Her face was wet with silent tears. "You shouldn't be here." "I can leave." "No," she whispered. "Stay." They sat in silence for a long time. No words, just peace. The next day, Daniel was back to work. But something had changed. Valera brought him water during his repairs. She didn't shout orders anymore. Instead, she asked, "What are you working on? Or do humans like music?" Daniel told her about Earth, how people loved music, food, and the stars. He talked about sunsets and dogs and laughter. Simple things. Things she had never experienced. "You humans are strange," she said one evening. "How you care, even when no one tells you to." Daniel smiled. "Maybe that's what makes us strong." She looked at him, quiet again. One morning, Valera brought a broken music box to him. "My father gave this to me when I was small. Can you fix it?" Daniel nodded. "I'll try." As he worked, she watched him closely. "Daniel," she said softly, "why do you keep helping me?" He paused, then answered, "Because no one else will." Her eyes filled with emotion, but she turned away quickly. "Fix it before sunset," she said in her usual royal voice, "or I'll be angry." But her voice held no real anger anymore, only something softer, something human. The royal ship Crown Flame moved quietly through deep space. Inside its glowing walls, Daniel Ross worked harder than ever. Every day, he fixed something new. He repaired cracked energy lines, realigned the gravity generators, and even tuned the soft lighting in the princess's chambers. But it wasn't just work anymore. Something was changing. Princess Valera still carried herself like royalty head high. Words sharp, but she no longer treated Daniel like a tool. She began asking questions. At first, they were cold and formal. How long do humans live?
What?
Is Earth like? But soon her questions became personal. What was your childhood like? Did your parents teach you to be kind? Daniel answered every question honestly. Told her about growing up on a farm, about fixing old machines. With his father, about playing guitar under the stars. Valera listened quietly, as if trying to understand a world far different from her own. One day, the ship's engine control center went into lockdown. Ship lights turned red, and an alarm echoed through the halls. Daniel was deep in the engine bay when it happened. Sparks shot out of a damaged coil, and several alien engineers panicked. Black smoke filled the room, sealed the vents. Someone shouted in Zethary, but they couldn't reach the control panel. The fire was spreading. Daniel acted fast. He grabbed a coolant pipe, smashed it open, and aimed it at the fire. Steam filled the room. Flames hissed and died. Daniel then pulled open a side panel and rerouted power manually, stopping a full engine. Meltdown. When the smoke cleared, several engineers coughed and looked at him in shock. "You saved us," one whispered. Daniel gave a small nod. "I just did what I had to." Later, word reached Princess Valera. Valera found Daniel sitting in a supply room, cleaning soot from his hands. She stood silently for a moment before speaking. "You saved them." Daniel looked up. "They would have died, and so would I. They're royal crew. Their lives are worth more than yours." Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "That's one way to look at it." She frowned. "And how do you see it?" He looked at her gently. "All lives matter. Titles don't change that." Valera stared at him. Then, to his surprise, she sat beside him. "You're strange, Daniel," he chuckled. "You've said that before." "And I'll say it again," she replied, though her voice was softer. This time, over the next few days, the crew treated Daniel differently. Some nodded politely. Others gave him space. Few even thanked him, but still, not everyone trusted him. Some Zethary nobles whispered behind Valera's back, "You're letting a human get close to you. He could be a spy. He's only kind because he wants something. Valera ignored them. But deep inside, their words echoed. That night, as Daniel worked on her old music box, Valera entered the room quietly. "Do you ever lie?" she asked suddenly. Daniel looked up. "Why?" "Because everyone lies, especially to royalty." He set the music box down and replied, "I try not to lie. It's harder to remember lies than the truth, you know?" She walked over and sat near him. "What if someone wanted to trust you but was afraid?" Daniel looked into her eyes. "Then I'd wait. Trust doesn't grow overnight." Valera said nothing for a moment. Then she stood and left. But she smiled before the door closed. The next day brought trouble, an old defense system deep in the ship, activated by mistake. Laser turrets began targeting moving crew. Alarms wailed, and parts of the ship sealed off. One turret fired at a passing Zethary. Noble Valera's cousin, Daniel, was nearby, jumped in front of the noble, and pulled her down. A laser scorched his back, but he didn't stop. He rushed to the control panel and disabled the entire system. He collapsed soon after. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was in the ship's med bay. Cool air touched his skin, and a soft light glowed. Above, Princess Valera sat beside him, eyes tired but focused. Her hands were folded in her lap. For once, she looked unsure. "You're awake," she said quietly, barely. Daniel replied with a weak smile. "You saved my cousin. She was in danger. You were not ordered to help." "I didn't need an order." Valera's voice shook slightly. "You're bleeding. Because of us." Daniel nodded. "That happens sometimes." She stood and paced the room. Then she turned to him and asked in a whisper, "Why do you keep doing this?" He looked at her with soft eyes. "Because I'd do it for anyone, even someone who thinks I want something." Her breath caught. She turned away. The next few days were different. Valera visited him every morning. She brought him books, food, and even tried telling him jokes, though her timing was terrible. Daniel laughed anyway. "You're a terrible comedian," he teased. She lifted her chin. "Zethary humor is complex. Your brain is too small." They both smiled. In private, she told him more about her life. How her mother, the Empress, trained her to rule with strength. How emotions were called weakness in Zethary culture. As a child, she was punished for crying. Daniel listened silently. She ended her story with a question. "Do humans cry often?" He nodded. "Yeah. It's not weakness. It's healing." Valera stared at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "You confuse me, Daniel Ross." He smiled. "I get that a lot." One evening, the music box finally played. A soft melody floated through the room, lullaby beautiful and old. Valera stood quietly, eyes closed. Daniel watched her, not saying a word. When the song ended, she opened her eyes. "My father sang that to me before he died. I'm glad you have it again." She nodded, then looked down at him. "I don't know what to do with you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? You were a prisoner, then a helper. Now I don't even know." "Maybe," Daniel said gently. "I'm just a friend." She blinked. "A friend?" "Yeah." Valera stepped closer, her voice soft. "We don't have that word in Zethari. Not in the way you mean it." Daniel smiled. "And maybe it's time you learned it." The crown flame floated through deep space, calm on the outside, but something dark was approaching. Far beyond the sensors, a fleet of ships moved quietly. They belonged to the Varnock Syndicate, a brutal alien faction known for surprise attacks and hatred for both humans and Zethary. Inside the ship, Daniel Ross had healed enough to walk again. Though pain still followed him, he returned to work. The crew, once silent and distant, now greeted him. Some offered help. Others gave him tools without being asked. It earned their respect, something rare for a human on a Zethary warship. And Princess Valera. She had changed too. She now spent time with Daniel almost every day. They would talk in the garden dome, share quiet meals, or walk through the ship's long halls. Their bond was not spoken, but it was strong. Even her royal guards noticed the change. One evening, she asked Daniel, "If you could leave now, would you go?" Daniel looked up at the stars through the glass roof. "I don't know. Maybe once I would have. But now." He looked at her. "I think I've found something here worth staying for." Valera didn't reply, but her cheeks turned a soft shade of violet, the Zethary sign of emotion. The next day, the alarms screamed across the ship. Enemy ships detected. Battle formation. All crew report to stations. Daniel was in the lower engine sector when it happened. Valera was in the throne room, meeting with senior nobles. The crew rushed to their positions. The ship shook as enemy fire hit the outer hull. The Varnak Syndicate had found them. Ships surrounded the crown flame. Bright energy beams lit up the darkness. Explosions echoed through the ship. One of the nobles shouted, "How did they find us here?" This route was secret. Valera stood tall, her voice firm. "It means someone betrayed us. Someone gave our position." Daniel quickly helped power up backup shields. He climbed inside damaged panels, ignoring the heat, the sparks, the pain in his side. A young Zethary engineer next to him said, "You should rest, human. You're still healing." Daniel shook his head. "Not while this ship's still breathing. Let's go." They worked together. The shields came back online, saving the ship from a direct hit. Above them, the main cannon roared, striking one of the Varnak ships and sending it spinning into fire. But then came the worst news. Borders. Varnak troops have entered Sector 7. And Sector 7 was where Princess Valera was. Valera's guards fought bravely, but the Varnak were stronger and faster. Black armor, red visors, and weapons that tore through metal.
Oh.
Valera tried to help, grabbing a plasma pistol from a fallen guard. She shot 2 Varnak soldiers, but there were too many. They surrounded her. One of them aimed a blade at her neck. "You're worth a lot, princess. Alive." But before he could move, a pipe slammed into his helmet from behind. Sparks flew. Daniel stood there, breathing hard, holding the heavy pipe. Get away from her. More Varnak turned, but Daniel didn't. Run. He swung the pipe again, knocking another soldier to the ground. One tried to stab him, but he dodged and kicked the alien back. Valera's eyes widened. "Daniel, not letting them take you," he said. He grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a wall. They ran together, through smoke and gunfire, until they reached a sealed door. Daniel quickly hacked the panel, overriding the lock. The door opened just in time. They slipped through, and it shut behind them with a loud clunk. They were safe, at least for now. Daniel leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Blood dripped from a cut on his shoulder. Valera stood close to him, watching him with wide eyes. "You could have died," she whispered. "I've had worse days," he joked, but his smile was weak. "Why? Why would you risk your life for me?" He looked at her, his eyes tired but honest. "Because you're not just a princess anymore. You're my friend." Her lips parted slightly. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she stepped forward and gently touched his face. "You are more than that to me, Daniel." He didn't reply, but the way he looked at her said everything. They stayed hidden for a while. Valera contacted the command deck and gave orders. Slowly, the crew began pushing the Varnak back. The enemy wasn't expecting such strong resistance. After 3 long hours, the Varnak ships retreated. The crown flame was damaged, but alive. The aftermath was quiet. Fires were put out. The injured were taken to the med bay. The crew worked together, side by side. Human or alien, there was no difference anymore. Later, Valera stood before her mother, the Empress, on a long-distance holocall. "You were attacked," the Empress said coldly, "because you allowed a human too close." Valera stood straight. "We were attacked because someone inside your court leaked our path." The Empress frowned. "You defend the human over your own kind?" "No," Valera replied. "I defend the one who saved me when your nobles ran." The Empress stared in silence. "This human has more honor than half our council," Valera continued. "He is not a prisoner anymore. He is crew." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." Valera smiled softly. "No, mother. For once, I think I'm not. Later, Daniel stood in the garden dome again. The stars above were quiet now. Peaceful. Valera joined him. "You look better in daylight," Daniel said, smiling. She chuckled. "And you look like you still need rest." He nodded. "Probably." There was silence between them, comfortable. And warm, she turned to him and said, "Do you trust me, Daniel?" He looked at her. "Yes. And do you believe I trust you?" He nodded again. "I do." She took a deep breath. "Then I want you to stay. Not as a servant. Not as crew. But as someone I need." Daniel reached out and gently held her hand. "I'm already here." After the Varnock attack, the royal ship Crown Flame became quieter. Damage teams worked day and night. Burn marks still scarred the walls. Crew members spoke in soft voices, remembering the fight. But inside the garden dome, Daniel and Princess Valera found peace. They often sat together now, under the glass roof, watching the stars. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they said nothing. But every silence between them felt warm, not empty. Daniel was no longer seen as a prisoner. The crew treated him with respect. Some saluted him. Others offered him food or tools. Even the guards lowered their weapons when he walked by. Still, not everyone was happy. Some nobles whispered behind Valera's back. Some sent secret messages to the Empress. But Valera no longer cared about whispers. She had changed, and Daniel had become the reason for that change. One morning, as Daniel worked on the ship's damage scanning system, Valera came to him. She wore a soft blue robe, her crown lighter, almost like she didn't want to look like royalty that day. "I want to talk," she said. Daniel smiled, wiping grease from his hands. "About what? About who I am?" He stood up and looked at her with kind eyes. "I'm listening." Valera sat on a crate nearby. "My mother always told me to be strong, not to show weakness, not to trust. Kindness was forbidden in the palace." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's a hard way to grow up," she said. "If I ever let someone into my heart, I'd lose control. And if I lost control, I'd lose thee." Throne Daniel didn't say anything. He let her speak. "She was wrong," Valera said. "Kindness is not weakness. You proved that." Daniel sat beside her. "You proved you can be strong and kind." Valera looked at him, her eyes soft. "You changed me, Daniel." Daniel smiled. "Changed me too." That night, the Empress sent a high-level message to the Crown Flame. It was short but heavy with meaning. "Return home at once. The human is to be left behind." Valera stared at the message in silence. Then she replied with only one sentence. "No." Empress responded immediately. "You defy the crown?" Valera sent her final answer. "I choose my own path." The next day, the mood on the ship was tense. Everyone knew the Empress was angry. Some feared she would send warships. Others believed she would remove Valera as heir. But Valera stood proud. She called the crew together and gave a speech in the main hall. "Many of you still see Daniel. Ross is a human outsider," she began. "But I see him as something else." The crew listened, silent and still. "He has saved lives, defended this ship, and showed us courage without a title. If that is not strength, then I don't know what." As she paused, then added, "I will not obey blind orders. I will not abandon someone who stood by me when others ran." Daniel stood at the side, surprised by her words. Valera turned to face him in front of everyone. "You are no longer a prisoner, Daniel Ross. You are part of this crew. And more than that," her voice softened, "you are part of my life." Crew remained quiet, but their expressions changed. Many nodded. A few even clapped slowly. Daniel stepped forward and gave a small bow. "Thank you, Princess. I'll stand by your side, no matter what comes." Valera smiled. "Then we face it together." Later, in the private chambers near the garden dome, Valera sat across from Daniel. "Do you think my mother will send ships after us?" Daniel shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe she'll wait." Valera looked at her hands. "I used to want to be Empress. I thought that was my destiny. You don't want it now?" I'm not sure. Maybe I want something else. Daniel leaned forward. Like what? She looked into his eyes, serious and calm. I want to be someone real, not a symbol, not just a name in a bloodline.
Ow.
Daniel gently touched her hand. You already are. They sat in silence. The stars above them twinkled like tiny lanterns. But peace never lasts forever. A message came from a neutral station near Zethary space. It said a group of nobles were planning to remove Valera from power. They had declared her unfit due to her emotional weakness and attachment to a human. The message ended with a warning. They are coming. Be ready. Valera read it and sighed. So, this is it. Daniel stood beside her. Then we fight. Together. She looked at him. This isn't your war. He smiled. You became part of my life, Valera. Makes it my war too. Valera gathered her loyal officers. Some were unsure. Some were afraid. But Daniel spoke. Two, he stood before the crew and said, I may be human. I may not belong in your world, but I know what loyalty looks like. And I know what betrayal feels like. He looked around the room. Princess Valera didn't give up on me when she had every reason to. She chose compassion when others chose fear. I ask you now, stand with her, not for titles, not for politics, but for what's right. Silence then. The chief of security stepped forward. I stand with the princess. Others followed. We stand with her. We fight. Valera looked at Daniel, her heart full. You always find the right words, he shrugged. I just speak the truth. That night, as the ship prepared for a possible battle, Valera walked alone to the garden dome. Daniel followed her quietly. She turned to him and said, If tomorrow brings war, I don't want to leave anything unsaid. Daniel stepped closer. Say it then. Valera's voice shook slightly. We're right. Trust doesn't grow overnight, but it grew. I know. She took his hands. You gave me something no one else ever did, freedom. Not just from duty, but from fear.
Ow.
Daniel gently touched her cheek. You gave me something too. A reason to believe aliens could be more than enemies. Valera smiled softly. Then what are we now? Daniel replied with a calm, sure voice. Something new. They stood together, their hands held, under the stars, and they waited for the storm to come. The next morning, the crown flame floated silently above a dark planet in neutral space. The sky outside was filled with tension. Fleet of Zethary, noble ships approached. Cold, silver warships filled with powerful weapons and proud commanders. They came not to talk, but to take Princess Valera by force. Inside the ship, the crew prepared for war. Shields were up, weapons ready. The halls were filled with quiet voices, sharp orders, and nervous footsteps. Daniel stood beside Valera on the command deck. He wore a simple uniform Naziatheri, black and silver. He was no longer seen as a prisoner, he was now part of the crew. Valera turned to him. This might be the end. Daniel nodded. Or a beginning. She gave a small smile. Still speaking like a dreamer. It's better than speaking like a coward, he replied. They both laughed softly. Then the enemy fleet sent a message. A tall Zethary noble, with sharp eyes and a golden sash appeared on the screen. Princess Valera, he said coldly, stand down. You have broken royal law, allowed a human into your inner circle. You spoke against the Empress. You must surrender your ship and your title. Valera stood tall. Her voice was calm. I stand for truth. I will not bow to fear. The nobles' eyes narrowed. Then you are no longer Zethary royalty. The screen went dark. Moments later, the first shot was fired. Explosions rocked the crown flame as battle began. Blue energy beams lit up space. Fighter ships danced between the warships, firing and dodging. Inside the ship, crew ran to battle stations. Engineers worked fast to keep power stable. Shield levels dropped, rose, then dropped again. Daniel moved with the repair teams. He knew the systems now. He fixed power relays, rebooted sensor grids, and even climbed into narrow tunnels to restart overloaded circuits. One officer shouted, "We need targeting online." Daniel rushed to the weapon core and fixed the damaged guidance unit. The main cannon fired, striking one of the enemy ships. The crew cheered, but the battle was not over. On the upper deck, Valera led the command. Focus on their flanks. Send fighters around their rear engines. Disable, not destroy, she ordered. Her voice was firm, clear. She was no longer just a princess. She was a true leader. One of the enemy ships tried to board the crown flame. A docking tube locked on. Enemy soldiers began forcing their way in. Daniel joined the defense team near the docking port. He held his Zethery stun rifle. "This is not how I imagined my day," he muttered. Beside him, a tall Zethery guard grinned. "Welcome to royal service." The enemy broke through the doors. A battle followed. Shots fired. Sparks flew. Daniel ducked, fired back, and helped pull a wounded crew member to safety. He wasn't a soldier, but he refused to run. After a long fight, the attackers were pushed back. The docking tube was blasted away. Daniel leaned against a wall, breathing hard. His hands shook, but his eyes were steady. Back on the command deck, the enemy fleet began to retreat. One by one, their ships broke formation and fell back. Valera stood tall, watching them go. A message came in this time from the Empress herself. Her cold face appeared on the screen. Behind her were gold pillars and shadowed guards. "You fought well," she said slowly. "Perhaps too well," Valera replied. "We only defended what was ours." The Empress's eyes moved to Daniel, standing quietly behind Valera. "So this is the human you chose over your crown." "I chose him because he reminded me who I really am," Valera said. "He showed me a better way." The Empress was silent. Then she said, "You have shamed the Empire, but you have also saved it from civil war." Valera raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? Many nobles were ready to divide the Empire. Your strength united your crew, your human united your people. Perhaps there is value in that." Daniel stepped forward. "Peace is possible, but only if you stop treating kindness like weakness." The Empress looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a strange expression, she said, "Perhaps I judged you too quickly, human." The screen went dark. Days later, the Crown Flame arrived at a neutral space station built for diplomacy. Representatives from Earth, Sveri, and other alien species came together. Daniel stood beside Valera as she gave a speech before the galaxy. "In the past, we feared each other," she said. "We saw difference as danger. But one human showed me that honor, loyalty, and kindness can come from anywhere, even from a so-called enemy." She turned to Daniel. "He did not fix just our machines. He fixed something inside me, something I didn't know was broken." The hall was silent. Then applause filled the air. The peace talks began. Later, in the garden dome once again, Daniel and Valera walked among the glowing flowers. Stars above them shined bright. Daniel chuckled. "Remember when you asked me why I was being nice too?" "You," Valera laughed softly. "Yes, I thought you wanted something. And now?" She looked at him gently. "Now I know you gave me something instead." He took her hand. "I didn't come here to be a hero. I just wanted to help." "And you did," she said. "More than you'll ever know." They stopped walking. Valera leaned closer and said, "I once feared emotions, but now I welcome them." Daniel smiled. "What changed?" "You did?" They stood under the stars, close and quiet. No titles. No war, no fear. Just two people from different worlds who found something real.